Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We really appreciate you coming in, listening to the show today. We have a pretty packed, very interesting schedule, pretty much all in some way relating to this big infrastructure bill going through Congress right now. First, we're talking about Joe Biden. He pulls back on the infrastructure bill, really trying to tie it to a social policy measure. After pressing toward a vote, Democratic leaders accepted the reality the bill could not pass before a broad climate change and safety net measure comes together. And that reality has been enforced by the now 96-member Progressive Caucus. Their persistence forced Speaker Nancy Pelosi to delay a planned vote on the $1 trillion infrastructure bill. In the end, President Biden sided with their position. A huge win for progressives here on this, really putting any question of, the Josh Gottheimer strategy to bed now in official Democratic strategy. And this is a popular bill. We are going to take a look at how popular it is with the help of former Bernie Sanders aide Warren Gunnels. And finally, we're going to be talking about Kyrsten Sinema, and how she seemingly bought an article in Axios the other day. That was kind of an insane story. Like, literally every piece of that article, every word of that article was very much related to something Kyrsten Sinema wants to paint about herself, including, being quote-unquote caught liking multiple wine o'clock Instagram posts. That's our senator, folks. All right. We are moving on to starting on our first story today. Big news. President Biden, facing an intra-party battle over his own domestic agenda, put his own $1 trillion infrastructure bill on hold on Friday. Really, this is not, already really pretty bad framing here from Jonathan Weissman and Emily Cochran. Jonathan Weissman, he has been a fixture in terms of questionable tweets. If you're on Twitter, he always shows up in some people's crosshairs once in a while, and has been over this kind of stuff. What we really have been seeing here is a pretty, it's not like this bill is not President Biden's agenda. The $1 trillion bill is not President Biden's agenda because 19 Republicans are supporting it. Like, they are people who are not going to support something that is in any way Biden, ran on or, should, or really even, it appears, wants to be tying himself to at this point. Like, it's so odious that the mainstream Democratic, central leadership has completely distanced themselves. I mean, they want the bill to pass. But, there has been Democratic senators coming out on, TV being like, this was all written by 12 senators and their corporate donors. Like, that's literally what a senator has publicly said. And it's got to be bad for a senator to come out and say that in person. So this bill, framing it as Biden's agenda, no, the real heart of Biden's agenda, already pared down from what even he or he ran on. People are saying this is a Bernie Sanders. I heard the ridiculous phrase that this is a Bernie Sanders mandate agenda with a Joe Biden mandate. No, this is not even what Joe Biden ran on. Joe Biden ran on $6 trillion. Like, Bernie ran on even more. I think he ran on something like double-digit trillion dollars. Like, he was very, very serious about this. And $3.5 trillion was not what he had in mind. Like, this already was a compromise. And that was part of the good progressive messaging that has been really, really so on point and unified throughout this entire time. They've had some hiccups through. I was definitely critical with the whole Iron Dome breakdown. That was frankly disgusting. But on this issue, there is no denying they have been incredibly good. We'll get to that. But in a closed-door meeting with Democrats at Capitol Hill, Biden told Democrats for the first time that keeping his two top legislative priorities together had become just reality, and he conceded that reaching a deal between the divided factions on his domestic agenda could take weeks. So pretty much saying keeping these top two legislative priorities together is the political reality, so says Joe Biden, President of the United States. That is something that through years of organization, years of electing candidates, years of putting people in the right places progressives have been able to make happen. This is a win, I think, for both sides, because it shows, people who are like, oh, screw the Democratic Party. Well, this was a major victory and shows that there has been major progress. Like, for the people, the Jimmy Dores and people like that out there in the world who's like, no progress has been made inside the Democratic Party. It feels that way sometimes. I definitely get that it feels that way. But, this is a great example of the fact, like, the idea that any of this would have happened, 3, 4, 5 years ago is out of the question. Not only, like, especially, the Obama period, no way. Like, the left was just not strong enough for this. And the fact that this is happening now is undeniably a huge, huge, huge step in the right direction. And there's no denying that. Unreal progress has been made on that front, but it also just proved the point of the people, mostly the same people, who were very loud and frequent throughout the last year or so in saying, why doesn't the Democratic majority or progressives use their leverage more in the current House situation? And yeah, they were right about that too. Like, I think that is definitely a fair point, because they can use it. They are organized, and really, it's not just the progressives. It's huge, huge chunks of, like, mainstream parts. It's frankly 100% of the Democratic base, and huge portions of the Democratic caucus just despise the game that Josh Gottheimer and Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin are playing. So that is really, really clear. And that is a big reason why the opposition to this bill has been so strong and so unified. Because I really get the feeling, if they had put, obviously would have lost if they had put that bipartisan infrastructure bill for a vote today or yesterday, whenever they're going to do it. But it would have lost bad. I think it would have lost real bad, because you got a lot of people who did not expect to come out, coming out and saying, this needs to be done together. Like, this is a political reality. This is the last time we're going to get to legislate, for a while, if things go the way we think they're going to go. And we won't hold on to the House. We will not be able to. We will not have power for a very long time. We're going to be able to pass a voting rights bill. I mean, the best hope we can do is legislate and give the people something to vote for us, like a reason to vote for us, some incentive to get to the polls, like to show we can function as a party. Yeah, so he says, I'm telling you, Biden does, we're getting this done. It doesn't matter when. It doesn't matter whether it's 6 weeks, 6 minutes, 6 days, or 6 weeks. We're going to get it done. The decision was a pretty big blow to the party's moderate wing, the driver behind efforts to separate the measure and score a quick victory on the traditional roads and bridges bill its members badly wanted to begin campaigning on. It was a win for the liberal flank, which had blocked any action. Well, again, bad framing alert here from the New York Times. Like, everybody wants to campaign on a bill, but people actually want to campaign on, people, that bill is just not worth campaigning on. Like, people, they all want an infrastructure, but the idea that, they were dying to campaign on the bill they were dying to campaign on was the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. It was not the bill that was like, publicly, privately partnering with this to build a bridge in 2038 in your neighborhood. Like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to build 3 different electrical charging stations every, 1,000 square miles if you live in a poor or disadvantaged neighborhood. Like, all the bullshit that was in that, excuse me, all the bull crap that was in that. But anyway, so it was a big blow to the party's moderate wing, that's for sure. It was a win for the liberal flank, which blocked any action on the bill until 10 Democrats unite around an expansive bill to confront climate change, expand the free and social safety net, and raise taxes on the rich. And a big thing about that was, like, people really, I think rightly so, they realized this is the last chance we are going to be able to get any of this on. If we get it done, it'll be a victory. The question is, when do we get that victory? Asked Representative Henry Cuellar of Texas, one of the uncensored Democrats who extracted a promise from Nancy Pelosi that she completely, took a big, fat dump all over. funnily enough, she extracted a promise for an infrastructure vote by October, and that has not obviously happened. Being that it is October 2nd, Democratic leaders insisted they had moved closer together and still had plenty of time to resolve their differences over the bigger bill and deliver on the president's promises. While great progress has been made in negotiations to develop a House, Senate, and White House agreement on the Build Back Better Act, more time is needed. Pelosi wrote in a letter to her colleagues, clearly the bipartisan infrastructure bill will pass once we have agreement on the reconciliation, but that seems to be true. To buy negotiating space, the House passed a stopgap measure to extend the federal highway programs that expired on Friday, and the Senate planned to pass the measure early as Saturday. Continuing talks between the White House and two holdout moderate senators, Sinema and Manchin, centered on getting them to around $2 trillion in spending on climate change and social policies, such as universal pre-K and family leave. But Sinema left Washington for a medical appointment and a fundraising retreat in Phoenix, complete with a morning donor hike and an evening cocktail hour and dinner without a resolution. So, that's where she was off to. It was 1 o'clock for her. No more, literally Nancy Pelosi, an 80-year-old woman who's, literally crinkling up before our eyes, has more stamina than Kristen Sinema, or just cares more about the job, which is incredible. Which is literally incredible. The fact that she's still there, and, she is literally, she's the Napa Valley ice cream queen. You know how that is. Nancy Pelosi. She's not exactly, in touch with the constituents or whatever, but Kristen Sinema is a whole other level. I gotta be honest. She's really making something quite special. Biden told Democrats in private meetings that in his aides' talks with the senators, they discussed spending as much as $2.3 trillion. This is far below the $3.5 trillion the president has proposed. Still, he told the lawmakers that it would make a significant difference in Americans' lives, accelerating economic growth, creating millions of good-paying jobs, and delivering once-in-a-generation benefits to the middle class. So what's going to be interesting here is, can they do that? Can the progressives pull that off again? I see no reason to. If there's sufficient things being cut from this $3.5 trillion bill, maybe you want to raise it up to 2.5 or maybe a solid 3. How about that? How about a nice round 3? It's really awful to negotiate, because ideally it should be a lot more than even 3.5, but there is still more power I think progressives could, they would be losing out if they were, I think, to just, tuck their tail behind their legs and say, oh, well, we didn't just make it that bad. We got it to 2.3, and we got some time to negotiate. That's a big win. It's much better than they were before, but they have the organizing power to do so much more. If they can hold the line and not vote for that Biden bill in the House or the Senate until it's not 2.3 or 3.5, but somewhere in between. That, I think, is something they should 1,000% do. You can get a whole lot of things done, Biden said, according to the person familiar with his remarks who relayed them on the condition of anonymity. He said, I know a little bit about the legislative process. Apparently he's been very absent. His aides have been really pressuring him. I'm pretty surprised about his lack of action in the legislative process here. But his visit left a group of moderates who had been promised an infrastructure vote before October unsatisfied. Representative Abigail Spanberger, who narrowly won a what a gal, who narrowly won a Virginia district long dominated by Republicans, and by the way, it's getting bluer and bluer every day because of politics like the one she's trying to hold up, I think. And a win on infrastructure would have propelled the president's other priorities forward. It's not a win on infrastructure if you cut out the biggest parts of the agenda, if you cut out the stuff that actually works. Because at this point, all the stuff in the original stimulus has expired. People are really starting to ask what's next, and they're starting to look at Biden and the stuff that he promised. And it was not, it was to restore, chaos, but it was also actually, build back better. That actually was what he was trying to do. Maybe, or people thought he was trying to do. supporters of the infrastructure measure, which overwhelmingly passed the Senate in August with bipartisan applause, were not shy of their disappointment. Respectfully, the president is wrong, says Neil Bradley, executive vice president and chief policy officer for, you guessed it, yeah, you're just a good, normal, good old infrastructure fan. Neil Bradley, executive vice president and chief policy officer at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. This bill should have been enacted 6 years ago. There was a chance to enact it 6 weeks ago, delay its consequences, and none of them are good. Okay, so, yeah, what are you going to do, U.S. Chamber of Commerce? Like, is that a threat? That sounds like a threat. Delay has consequences. None of them are good. Bring us exactly what we want right now, or we're going to make have to make some, shall we say, strategic moves. But many Democrats shrugged off the criticism, saying the week's chaos, including 2 postponed votes on the infrastructure bill, many closed-door meetings, and feuding factions, and much hand-wringing about the possible collapse of Biden's agenda, would soon be forgotten. Everyone wants deals and promises to be kept, and their feelings are hurt when they're not being treated right. "Aw," said Tom Malinowski, who won an infrastructure vote. But he added, if Democrats ultimately deliver, nobody back home gives a damn about any of that stuff. And you know what? Nobody back home gave a damn about the September 27th date. The reason why you did that was because your donors told you to. Stop the cap. All right, let's move on. We're back in a second.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our segment to tell you all about what's going on here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network this summer. We do, as I'm sure you know, have a great lineup available for you. We, of course, start with our flagship show, Newsflash, all new Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Uncultured, irregularly back every Saturday with live music and sports analysis with my co-host for the summer, Bennett Laxton. Hidden History will be brand new every Thursday on a bit of a hiatus, but will return shortly. It's the summer of podcasting. It's the summer of sounds. All you got to do is just keep listening wherever you get your podcasts, always here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to our next story. Progressive Democrats in Congress who have long promoted a liberal agenda but often shied away from using hardball tactics to achieve it did something unusual this week. They dug in, finally, Pramila Jayapal, Deputy Whip, or Deputy Vice President, I don't know, Ilhan Omar, killing it out there. Mark Pocan as well, really extracting some, big concessions, all by doing a very simple action a lot of people wanted them to do a long time ago, but they have done it now. Nearly 100-member caucus refused to support a $1 trillion infrastructure bill that's a major piece of President Biden's agenda, seeking leverage for a bigger fight. Their stance forced Speaker Nancy Pelosi to delay a planned vote on the measure and ultimately prompted Biden to side with them in saying that there could be no vote on infrastructure legislation until agreement on a far broader, multi-trillion-dollar social policy and climate measure. The maneuver drew plaudits from liberal activists and, I don't know, again, all the people who had supported the bills. Great New York Times framing on that. And it's been really, 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 really remarkable, I think, to see this. This is a turn that, again, if you saw before, I think they had the capability, honestly, to do this for a long time. They were powerful, they had numbers, they had a lot of very, they had a lot of very, devoted people, and they had the policy support. They were fighting for things the American people wanted to see and really very much agreed with. But what did happen was, by the end of things, they just did not have the will. They were not in the position. They were not used to really throwing down and saying, you know what, I'm actually going to get pissed about this. I'm going to do something about this. And yeah, it's really been quite incredible. So it's really signaled progressives enjoyed newfound influence, including the backing of a president long associated with the party's moderates. Because really what the progressives have done here is that, obviously they came in, Bernie Sanders came in with a higher agenda. They would have probably supported a little bit more, in the climate side of things, a little bit more broader spending, lowering the Medicare age, $15 minimum wage, things like that. You can go down the list, forgiving student debt, they're just coming to be at this point. But still, the progressives here have compromised. They have worked with President Biden on his agenda. And Biden, finally had the political sense to say, hey, I'm going to fight for his agenda, and I'm going to be fighting against the people who are part of the moderate wing of the party because, we're in a rightward moving politically country with the strong polarity of the Republican Party, the weak polarity of the Democratic Party. So the things only happen here when there is urgency, said Representative Pramila Jayapal of Washington. I'm just so proud of our caucus because they're standing up for people who feel like they have not been heard in this country for a very long time. I think they're saving Biden's agenda. They're saving the real chance for Democrats in the midterms, and they're actually, genuinely making people's lives better in, at least in some small way. We really have had, and some in a very, very big way, some like the child tax credits, things like that. So while the progressives scored a tactical victory, negotiations continue to whittle down the size of the social policy and climate bill, which are already much smaller than the initial $6 trillion to $10 trillion many of them had envisioned. So again, that is the compromise that a lot of people have not really put into the equation about, Biden's working with the progressives. Like he's going from his wing of the party to Bernie's wing of the party. Like he's turning into the person that so many people thought he would be. He's been captured by socialism and Bernie. Like, oh no. But yeah, they wanted like 6 to 10 trillion, and it's probably end up like something like 2. At least progressives could do what they did here and like continue to be smart, I think, and withhold their votes. Despite its growing ranks, the Progressive Caucus had struggled to enact its vision. Activists had grown frustrated as they helped elect members of Congress who then fell in line voting for whatever Democratic leaders put on the floor. In recent years, the caucus tried and failed to cut military spending by 10% and struggled to enact major tenets of what it called its people's budget. High-profile progressives protested this year over a lapsing eviction moratorium, but the effort failed to muster enough support for Democratic leaders to put the legislation on the floor to extend it. The week's machinations has buoyed the movement. During a private meeting of progressives on Friday evening, lawmakers were celebratory as they discussed how they were able to hold the line for Mr. Biden's agenda. It's undeniable that this is a new era of progressive power, said Mary Small, the National Policy Director of an Indivisible Project, a grassroots group. They had a list of priorities for list of what their priorities would be for the reconciliation bill, and they've been dogged. Miss Small said progressives won the battle of ideas before the battle of tactics, and I think that's definitely true. And that's what gives you that's what should give you the confidence to like really stand out there and say, you know what, we're going to make things a little bit uncomfortable. We just are, and we can get away with it because it's politically feasible for us too, because we have the broad support of the people. And it's not just us, it's not just the progressives, it's Biden too, because we are working for, in large part, the even reduced Biden agenda. So, no excuse. Come on. Anyway, Small said the progressives, they won that battle of ideas through the battle of tactics. The social spending and climate change platform put forth by Biden stems in large part from the proposals of Senator Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, and the chairman of the Budget Committee, who's the first chairman of the Progressive Caucus. But bare-knuckle tactics were important too, said Small. They had a plan to deliver on their priorities, rather than just talking about their preferred policies. Kaniela Ng, so glad to see, he's been a great progressive policy, activist guy for a long time. So it's good to see him getting some love, but he's a climate justice campaigner from the People's Action. Said many progressive activists were still upset about how Democrats had allowed Republicans to weaken the Affordable Care Act with a slew of amendments when the party controlled both chambers of Congress. But now he is cheering the stance taken by the Progressive Caucus. They're doing exactly what we need to do. He said the strategy is to pass exactly what Biden promised. added that progressives were only responding to the political maneuvers of centrist Democrats who have sought to pass the infrastructure bill without broader measures, and the liberals' tactics were reminiscent of those employed by the ultra-conservative Freedom Caucus, whose members routinely threatened to withhold their block of votes unless Republican leaders met their demands. More moderate Republicans, particularly those from competitive districts, became incensed with the group, blaming them for standing in the way of popular bills that were also political imperatives. But here it's the opposite, because these bills are not only good bills that help people, but they're the president's agenda, and the moderates are the ones that are outside the bounds of popularity. Very, very interesting. Really interesting dynamics, and interesting to see what they can do next, because as we talked about, they do have things to do. All right, now we're going to go to this Warren Gunnels video. Longtime staff director and policy advisor for Bernie Sanders, who's sometimes referred to as the keeper of receipts, argues in this video that corporate Democrats Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are blocking an agenda that's widely supported by the American public. Again, very, very much worth keeping in mind, and something that Democrats have really ultimately completely failed to properly market.
The Build Back Better agenda is the most progressive, modern agenda of all time, up to $5 trillion, and it's not polling well.
It's honestly, it's insane that people like Meghan McCain can not only get on TV because they have no talent. How could that have happened? Nobody can put two and two together there. But then just say complete counterfactuals. It's not polling well. As Warren Gunnels would say.
Oh, man! Are you kidding me? Look, I'm not quite sure what planet Meghan is living on, but right here on planet Earth, the overwhelming majority of the American people, including independent centrists, support the $3.5 trillion American Families Plan. And here are the receipts. According to an August 2nd Quinnipiac poll, they asked the American people, do you support or oppose a $3.5 trillion spending bill on social programs such as child care, education, family tax breaks, and expanding Medicare for seniors? And guess what, Megan? 62% of the American people said they support this bill, while only 32% said that they opposed it.
It's not polling well.
Don't like that poll? On July 26th, a Monmouth poll found that 63% of the American people support the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill to, quote, expand access to health care and child care, provide paid family and medical leave, and make community colleges tuition-free. Don't like that one? Well, how about Navigator Research? It asked the American people on September 21st, quote, President Biden and Democrats have proposed new legislation to provide paid family and medical leave, establish a universal pre-K program, expand Medicare coverage for seniors to include dental, vision, and hearing coverage, lower health care costs by allowing Medicare to negotiate lower drug prices, provide tax breaks for clean energy, and expand the child tax credit. Do you support or oppose the legislation? Guess what? 66% of the American people said that they supported this bill, including 93% of Democrats, 61% of independents, and 39% of Republicans.
And really what this is, it's just not, it's the idea that this is not polling well. If someone just tells you it's not polling well, it's just not polling well really among the people who matter the most in politics. And those people are those who are, the oligarchs, the people who really or where Kristen Sinema is at, as you're probably, if you're listening to this on the day this came out, probably Kristen Sinema, as I'm talking to you, is whining and dining fundraisers who are paying her, literally paying her right in front of our literally very eyes, and it's all completely legal, affirmed by the Supreme Court and everything. They're paying her to vote against this bill that is going to impact them. They've stated they're opposed to it. These same groups, Kristen Sinema is there. She will receive money from them, and she will continue to oppose the bill. She's not going to come back next Monday and say, "Oh, I've had a big change of heart. I support the bill now." That's not going to happen. I really don't it's just incredible. This is a country. It really, really is.
polling well.
Don't like that one? Well, let's take a look at Fox News. On August 12th, Fox News asked the American people, do you favor or oppose the additional infrastructure items being considered by the U.S. House that would allocate $3.5 trillion and include spending to address climate change, health care, and child care? And guess what? 56% of the American people said that they favor that plan, including 88% of Democrats, 60% of independents, and 30% of Republicans.
60% of independents.
What about the individual components of our $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill? Well, according to Morning Consult, 84% of the American people want to expand Medicare so that every senior in America receives dental, vision, and hearing benefits. 81% of the American people want Medicare to negotiate with the pharmaceutical industry to lower the outrageous price of prescription drugs.
It's not polling well.
Let's be clear. When 84% of the American people want to expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing, and 81% of the American people want Medicare to negotiate for lower drug prices, opposing these policies doesn't make you a moderate.
Nope.
It doesn't make you a centrist.
Nope.
It makes you an extremist who is way out of touch with the American people.
That's right.
So, Megan, here's the deal.
Megan, you're a radical extremist, and you make me feel very scared and unsafe. There. I said it. We're back in 20 seconds.
Buckingham Palace has announced the death of His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
It's news flash.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are really going on to a fascinating last story here. This is with the Discourse blog, Jack Merkinson, writing this one. So he writes, one of the biggest questions circling around Washington is, what the hell is Kyrsten Sinema's deal as she continues to block this reconciliation bill? And the prescription drug price bill, no taxes, nothing. Really making it rough for everybody right now. So she really does not cooperate with endless string of profiles trying to work out, what her whole thing is. So, real journalists, they reach out to her and she doesn't really respond because, she's probably heard of them before. You may have heard of them too. But there is a journalist who, quote unquote, I would not be surprised if this Hans Nichols, that's the guy's name. It kind of sounds like a fake name. I would not be surprised if that's Kyrsten Sinema sitting behind the keyboard typing away next to a glass of Pinot. You never know. But so one journalist does seem to have a direct line to Sinema's inner workings. Axios' Hans Nichols. Twice in the past few weeks, Nichols has published behind-the-scenes glimpses of what's going on in the cinema world, and by sheer coincidence, he keeps finding allies to remind us that Kyrsten Sinema is pretty awesome. Nichols' first dispatch from Kristen's corner came in mid-September when he dramatically revealed that Sinema was a hardcore wonk who was coming to talks with the reconciliation bill armed with the most powerful thing you can ever have in legislation: spreadsheets. Senator Kyrsten Sinema is negotiating the size and scope of President Biden's $3.5 trillion budget plan armed with her own spreadsheets about the cost and tax hikes needed for each program. People familiar with the matter tell Axios. Why it matters, Senator Joe Manchin is getting attention for balking at the $3.5 trillion price tag. Sinema's accountant-like focus on the bottom line will be equally important to winning the votes of them and other key Democrats. Behind the scenes, Sinema refers to spreadsheets as she strategizes with her colleagues about the next steps in the budgeting process. It's pretty incredible. People familiar with the matter have been really informative on this. Thank you for really telling us why Kyrsten Sinema has opposed this bill. I'm sure it's no other reason. It's just she wants to look at the spreadsheets a little more because she really cares. But on Friday morning, Nichols was back, this time with a guide to cracking the Sinema code. It goes, Senator Kyrsten Sinema's political allies have some free advice for anybody trying to bully the wine-drinking triathlete into supporting President Biden's $3.5 trillion budget bill. She doesn't play by Washington's rules, and she's prepared to walk away. Yeah, that's something we've been able to figure out, those two things. And, walk away means obviously walk away into, K Street and a very nice lobbying job. But it goes on to say, between the lines, progressives could be forgiven for presuming Sinema, 45, the first openly bisexual member of Congress who's easy to spot in her trademark sleeveless dressed as wry wigs and acrylic glasses, would share their woke politics of, giving, universal pre-K, like broadband, all the stuff like child tax credit, stop with that wokeness, get out of here. Kyrsten Sinema doesn't support the woke child tax credit, no way. It's really, Kyrsten Sinema, Hans Nichols has some interesting conceptions of woke politics, but she's unconventional. See recent internship at a Sonoma winery, and a force to be reckoned with. Literally, this is a sentence about not like a superhero comic book, but literally about a senator and a respected news outlet. She's unconventional. See recent internship at Sonoma winery, and a force to be reckoned with. Wow. I'll have to say just wow. She's going to rise between 4 to 5 a.m. to train for her next race, and she was forced to take up aqua jogging after breaking her foot this summer in something called the light at the end of the tunnel marathon. A rich white woman loving wine and running. That's just, craziest. So cool. Really cared about that deeply and wanted to know more. A trained social worker who relied on Pell Grants in college, Sinema believes in the power of people. Sinema believes in the power of government to help lift people from poverty. I'm so glad. If we had known that before, I would have felt a lot better personally. Clearly, Sinema's campus Joe Nichols would transmit her favorite thoughts back to the rest of us with zero scrutiny. It's weird that someone considers their part of the job, that part of their job description, but that is journalism at Axios. And honestly, I think I'm going to need some real proof that Hans Nichols is a real person, and that's not just Kyrsten Sinema saying how to compete. Oh, it is. Very interesting. Okay. That's a little more depressing. All right. Anyway, that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back on Monday.